Welcome to the fourth episode of Up in the AI.
So the usefulness of this is about practitioners discovering for themselves what the best use of this is, how to use it, how to prompt it.
If you had to kind of rewind the first days in your current role, knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell yourself? Today we're at HQ, this time with my peers. Tara Waters, former Chief Digital Officer at Ashurst, Drew Winlaw, Partner and Head of LLMs at Simmons, and Gerard Frith, Entrepreneur in Residence at Taylor Wessing.
The thinking behind that presupposes that the only reason you're doing this is for efficiency, and there are many, many other benefits.
I probably would say to my old self, think bigger, think bolder, and engage more of the teams up front and early on.
This is all a big experiment.
Today's topic, Gen AI and law firms. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Really good to have you all. So this particular episode is about, generative AI in your firms, in the industry, how law firms are using it. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. Let's maybe start though with just, how you move from kind of practicing roles into the heads of innovation and similar roles where you are now. What do you think?
I can go. I've never been a practicing lawyer, so my background is tech.
Yeah.
Immediately prior to moving into law, I was running a couple of startups. One called Matter AI, which was a AI product and consulting company. Yeah. I did a lot of work with a couple of law firms. One of them being Kemp Little.
Yeah.
And then when I sold that company, I was invited to join Kemp Little as Chief Digital Officer. That was my route in, and then a couple of years at Kemp Little developing products, doing digital transformation, and then post Deloitte transaction, I moved across to Taylor Wessing as Entrepreneur in Residence.
It's a good title, that, isn't it? Entrepreneur in Residence.
Yeah.
That's a good one. There have been some funny ones actually across the industry. That's one of the better ones, I reckon. Drew, what do you reckon?
So I came to law as a second career. So my early career was in manufacturing. But when I did study law in the UK, I did my training contract in Cambridge and practiced for about 4 years. And I didn't really enjoy it.
That's all right.
The reason I didn't enjoy it is because I saw systems around me that were all broken and were all fundamentally lots and lots of duplication and bad data entry, bad quality data. And I wanted to fix those problems. So I got an opportunity, had a very forward-thinking managing partner at that firm who gave me the space to explore what is now legal engineering. So putting together systems where data goes in to one system, gets cleaned up, goes to another system. And
so this is wavelength now. This is pre-wavelength.
It's pre-wavelength.
Yeah.
So I was with that firm for 6 or 7 years, I think, and then left Taylor Vinters, which is now part of Mishcon to set up Wavelength with Peter Lee.
Yeah.
So legal engineering business.
Yeah. I remember going to the EWAL labs in Cambridge in probably 2017. You're still there?
We were there in
there?
2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a while ago.
Indeed.
Come a long way. It's definitely come a long way, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Wavelength was bought by Simmons & Simmons, and we've had a really interesting time in the first 5 years since acquisition. And then when Gen AI started to become a real thing, I put my hand up for working out what to do.
Right. We'll come to that, obviously. Tara.
Yeah, it's actually a mix of the two. I started out my career in technology, like Gerard, and then law became my second career back in the U.S. I went to law school, but moved here to London to actually practice as a U.S. lawyer, but in 3 UK-based law firms. So I've never actually worked at a U.S. firm other than for a summer period when I was in law school. And it just happened that I think because of my background as the legal industry sort of started to recognize the importance of technology, especially those firms that didn't have a historic technology industry focus, that I had just reached that right level of seniority where I kind of raised my hand and said, hey, this is a space where I have unique and different skill set and experience. So that when I was at Ashurst, which is my previous firm, I was just right time, right place, really, when the firm itself decided to invest a bit more internally on what it was doing with technology, particularly around digital products. And I literally raised my hand. I said, I don't think there's anyone else in this firm that could lead this other than me, if you're willing to take a bet on me. And they did, and that's how my career evolved.
And so how did that progress then? So I know there was, you had a very interesting kind of not survey. It was a Gen AI implementation report that everybody was reading, and obviously that was the result of probably a fair amount of hard work internally.
Yes, definitely. I think just our point of view around digital and new technologies, and then eventually AI and Gen AI, evolved over the 7 years that I was in that role. And I think we became really focused on user experience being at the core of everything we were trying to do, and with Gen AI in particular, because there was such heavy interest across everyone in the firm. It was the first time people, and everyone else repeats this, it's the first time people were literally banging our doors down saying, what are we doing? How can I be involved? From the most gray-haired senior partners to the new entrants that were in the firm. And we just knew we had to capitalize on it. And our view was very much that it needed to be as firm-wide and inclusive as possible. So we designed everything that we did from trialing a handful of products to then collating, gathering the feedback and evidence that we needed to use to put forward an investment case on how we wanted to approach Gen AI, to then the eventual rollout of an enterprise-wide Gen AI solution. Our view was that we really need to focus on all of our people. So we made sure that we involved someone from every single office at every single level and role. So we would try to be as inclusive as possible. And then we collated a bunch of qualitative and quantitative data and feedback. And that was through just general surveys as well as targeted conversations with people that we had participating in all of the trials and pilots to make sure that we had the voice of Ashurst at the core of what we were trying to do. And we went into that knowing that it was going to be really important that people heard what that voice was. And so we made the decision at the start to publish the results of our findings. So we went into that knowing we wanted to make sure everyone in the firm had access to the data we had gathered and understood, therefore, why we were making the investment recommendations that we were making. And then we saw an opportunity to share those learnings with the industry. And so we published a version of that report externally to hopefully share our experiences and give everyone else potentially a starting point for doing some of their own trialing and surveying internally that they could learn from our experience.
Amazing. What about you guys? How did it kind of start at your firms? Was it? I remember at my previous firm, I think I was already presenting at a board meeting or something. It was probably last February, and ChatGPT had kind of just come out. But was it really February last year? Were people really talking about it in a work context? There was obviously a bit of it, but there was no kind of client safe versions. It was all just kind of speculation. And I remember bringing up a board meeting we should really be doing something with this now. And as it happened, the CEO was his son was already using it for his homework, because I remember whereas people like us obviously heard about ChatGPT probably in the first week, right? A lot of other people hadn't, and even mid last year there was still lots of people didn't really know about. Obviously everybody kind of does now, my parents, everyone's kind of using it now. As it happened, his son was already using it, and therefore he'd used it, and he was like, yeah, it's amazing, we definitely got it. And that I don't know if you had any similar experiences with the senior people and getting buy-in for these kind of projects early on.
Yeah, I think I'm in a privileged position. I've got a team of data scientists who are really on this.
Yeah.
And so we were having some early discussions about how interesting this is. And that developed to the point where, this really is quite something. And it seems naive now, but sort of our early prompting experience, but way back then, showed us what was possible and how we could kind of reduce a bit of hallucination, basically,
Yeah, right.
by some prompting. I
Yeah.
know that might sound naive right now, but at that point it was like, wow, you can really control this thing. You can try and control this thing.
Yeah, it's like,
And that led to discussions with the managing partner, and he put forward a really compelling investment case, really, and we started to build the team. So,
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I mean, there was a group of us internally who had been talking about generative AI for a little while, and kind of, the fanboy group who had been looking at ChatGPT 2 and wasn't very good, but it was quite interesting. It was potentially quite dangerous, at that point. And then
because there was a lot less guardrails with like the earlier.
Absolutely,
It used to go mad, didn't it?
It
Like
did, it had
GPT-3.
crazy phases. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't look anywhere near. It was purely an open thing as well at that point as well. So it didn't look at that point like there was going to be any kind of business value out of this for quite some time. And I think 3 and 3.5 took everyone a little bit by surprise, didn't it? But there was a conversation ongoing about it internally, really just an informal one. Our managing partner was very quick on this as well, and immediately asked a group of us to put something together, the plans for how we would take this forward. The development team very quickly moved to trying to create a safe version of this, but the head of risk was very engaged as well and drew up risk plans around this very quickly. And within about 6 weeks, there was a real there was enough weight behind it that other people started to engage. We just set up some informal networks originally around Teams groups, etc. People started piling in with the things that they were hearing. I guess by around about May time,
May 23.
May 23, yeah, exactly. There was quite good progress on identifying how at least to create a safe version around this, so that people could start experimenting. And as Tara said, I mean, we've all felt it, but it was one of those, it was that rare occasion, that probably unique occasion when people were beating down the door. There was broad interest, the media was engaged, and lawyers were beginning to come with ideas. So it was very easy compared to other areas of tech that, of course, we tried to push.
Yeah. And how do you think fast forward to today, how widely would you say it's used? Do you think there's still a bit more in the tank? Like, do you think it's mainly kind of chat and ad hoc stuff? Are you seeing kind of, building some agents, deploying any of them? What do we think?
So we've got about 80% of fee earners using our Percy tool, and that's
Monthly,
about,
or just like in general?
in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And then every day there are 500 unique users who use it. So
Yeah.
not everyone's using it every day.
Yeah,
We're not there
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
But actually, I don't think they will, because there's going to be a plethora of technologies to choose from.
Yes.
We're also rolling out Copilot. So Copilot for the sort of general business admin type support, and Percy for the more detailed, more complex, primarily legal use cases.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
But there's still a way to go, but it feels like we are breaking the back of it.
Yeah.
From an adoption point of view.
Yeah.
Like we're well past the 50% mark.
Yeah. I think it is. It's almost over that level, isn't it? Where you have like the people who sell it to each other and then you can't kind of not use it. And how do you think that the change piece there was any different? Like the rollout piece was different. Did you do anything that was kind of like a bit special? Because obviously, as we've all said, there was that raw interest there of like, give it to me. Like, forget about testing it. I just want to like use it every day. But not with everybody, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I did exactly what Gerard was just saying, like focusing on providing the safe space for people to play. And so in our very first version of Percy, we introduced it as an educational tool and not as a tool for work. And
Right.
that was kind of quite
That's
deliberate.
interesting.
Because we wanted people to approach it with a sense of exploration. And we didn't want them to evaluate too quickly this kind of cynical lawyer, that's not going to do the thing that I imagined it might have been able to do.
Yeah.
So that kind of delayed that critical assessment of the tool until such time as, now it's very performant, actually. Now we're on more recent models and we've got a custom RAG pipeline that really improves the kind of completions that we're getting back. So, it's a fascinating space.
What about
We
you
actually
guys?
took a little bit of a similar but slightly different approach in the sense that we thought in particular, because at Ashurst we selected a legal specific AI tool as the starting point, third party, that we needed to have and build as much trust and confidence in the tool for legal work as possible. And therefore, the message was very much, you can use this in all of your work day to day, asterisk, with a few small exceptions here. But we thought it was really important to not instill fear and worry about its use up front, because that would immediately cause self-selection out of engaging. And I think what was really incredible, especially from, kind of that change management perspective, was we genuinely saw, again, in ways we have never seen before, especially with the practicing lawyer community, was people actually being willing to play and test and to experiment and to do something and share the fact that the platform didn't perform as well as they were expecting to, or performed very poorly and did exactly what they didn't want it to do. But we created the safe space to share the experiences so that we could turn all of those points into learning moments for everybody else. And that we found was really, really helpful in the early days. Obviously, I don't have access to any of the ongoing usage data at the firm, but certainly in the first 2 months, we saw, what I think was a perceptible mindset shift in terms of across the whole of the firm, that willingness to do trial and error in a way that you wouldn't see with a lot of the previous legal tech tools that we put in front of people. And that was very much designed to try to create that effect. And I think from our perspective, we took a very different approach to previous rollouts because we were going so broadly, and we knew that there was this real risk of, non-performance in certain areas. But we made that part of the sell, which is we want you to uncover the areas of non-performance so we can all learn that from each other. And we can't tell you absolutely this works and absolutely this doesn't, with the exception of legal research, where we said, please do not use this for legal research.
Yeah.
And people were really receptive to that in a way that we were very nervous about, but very, very pleased that it was received in the way we designed it.
That's so critical, isn't it? Giving people that opportunity for the safe space to discuss this and work out what works. Because it's not like a legal tech product that we would have rolled out before. It doesn't have boundaries in the same way. So much of the usefulness of this is about practitioners discovering for themselves what the best use of this is, how to use it, how to prompt it, etc. So similarly, we took an approach that was very much embedded in trying to create more informal networks within the firm, more opportunities for people to discuss this. So we've got now, I'm sure similar to you guys, we've got AI champions in each practice areas who are generally partners. We've got AI champions who are generally associates, and all of them are working with our various business services teams and with each other to develop their ideas. So we've just rolled out some functionality around prompt flow management, enabling people to share their prompting to can long prompts that they've created for complex work like chronologies or for extracting data from particular sets of documents, and that's all been built on actually getting people to evolve those prompts within their own particular teams and share with one another.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because you kind of do wonder what our usage is also kind of similar. I think we're probably on about, we're around about 30,000 queries a month. So what's that per day? It's probably probably broadly similar, whatever it is. But then you're kind of thinking, well, what are they all? Because it's really hard to tell. I mean, you could read them. I mean, you wouldn't want to just for like privacy concerns, but like there's just too many of them. So and what we've recently done is we've got the AI to categorize each thread under one of 27 different headings. So yeah, you do see like 10% of usage is like what we've classified as non-legal / personal, as you do. But actually, I'd say probably, and some are not our work but non-legal related. But I'd say a good 80% of uses are legal, so legal queries, helping write emails, legal emails. Research is on there. We don't recommend research, but we do say that if you upload the case, like the actual judgment, then it's much better. It's not good for like research, I suppose, but like, just that aspect of it. And, we have a bunch of other ones, creating chronologies and whatever. So yeah, it's interesting to see like, particularly, how do the banking associates use it and how do the tax partner use it? Oh, it's a bit different. Isn't that interesting? How do the trainees, and you do see that a distinct differences between the way that, trainees and senior associates use it, for example, which I have found, quite interesting. Yeah.
Do you do anything with that data, Jack? Do you use that to kind of help different areas understand what others are doing and learn from that?
Yeah, so we certainly use it to target people that we think should be using it more compared to their peers. We're going to publish it, actually. We're just going to probably just do like a data dump, like a little campaign as to is no joke. I think we need to refine the categories a bit more, like the legal query one, which is like probably the so not legal research, it's like a general legal question, point of law is the most common one. I think we need to like break it down a bit further, so we've got otherwise it's a bit concentrated there. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see different departments, different usage areas, different top 3 use cases. So yeah, I was interested in also your thoughts on how it's actually impacted supervision of juniors. Any thoughts?
My thought is that this technology provides everybody at any level of seniority with more than they had before. So I think starting at the senior end, I think some of this technology will reduce the amount of work that's delegated to junior people, because the senior person can do it on their own quite quickly, and they save the delegation and management time of that. But equally, the junior people also can achieve a lot more. And as these tools improve, I think they will get more and more access to, the golden juice, if you like, from the senior experience in the firm when that's made available in written form and available to the models. So, yeah, I think there's a general awareness of what can be done, and there's a bit of a catchphrase going around at the moment. So when there are tasks to be done, people are often saying, "Can Percy help with that?"
Yeah.
Which is like
you see that as well.
Kind of a
default.
Just a yeah.
Let's get oh, well, I wonder what psychic things about that.
It's
yeah,
like, and even if the answer is no, that's fine. At least you've thought about it, and then maybe it's better for Copilot, or maybe it's just not a thing that will be helped by this kind of technology.
Yeah.
The question of supervision was one of the first things that in particular came up from the partners. How do I supervise my team now if they're using some form of Gen AI tool? But actually, to your point, Drew, I think sort of drill into it is like, well, exactly, hopefully what you're doing currently, which is, inquiring as to what sources they use, what they checked, making sure they were thorough in terms of what sources they use. It's just that some of those sources are now being surfaced up very quickly within seconds, as opposed to spending hours Googling and trying to mine various databases for information. So I think what we found with a lot of things relating to Gen AI and questions and concerns was actually, this is what you should be doing all along. In fact, a lot of existing policies covered this. There was really more about, what I found was it was really more around reinforcing that actually this is not this magic tool that suddenly changes our legal paradigm yet anyway. And so, just have a moment, reflect, common sense, make sure you're giving good instructions to the people that you're asking to do the work. if you have a preference about whether or not you want them to use Gen AI, by all means, please indicate your preference, but be thorough that in checking and making sure that you've asked the person who's doing that work the right questions. And you probably should have been doing that all along, but maybe we're refocusing their minds on some of their professional obligations.
Yeah, that's true. I think, not a great deal to add to that, because I think, both great responses. And the one thing I would add is I think there's quite an interesting conversation to be had around agents and how they can be used in this context. So we've certainly been looking at that, about how, for example, agents can encapsulate those different roles within a matter. So providing, obviously not substituting, but providing a degree of supervision to make sure that the right questions are being asked, that the right things are being logged, that the right thinking is being applied. And again, these things are enormously useful assistance in these processes.
Interesting. Yeah, because we've, I think the part that comes down to like level of explainability that the juniors have to have of what they're getting out. So as you said, the tool can produce that memo really quickly. And let's say it's 100% right, like a few tweaks and it's good to go. But did they really learn from that? So some partners will say, well, I learned through physical data rooms and I did, is it, you have to have gone through tens of thousands of document review exercises in order to like really say, and obviously there's an element of, being in the trenches and learning from that. But I think if you are, going to produce the memo really quickly, but you don't really understand how it's come to that and why it's given why it's chosen that particular point and major, like you're not really learning anything. So what we try and encourage, and we do see that people are, carrying these out are, did you use Sidekick to generate this, whatever, particularly complex cause? Yes. Okay. Explain it to me. Just explain it to me. Like how does it do it? And then if they can't do that, then it's okay, well, off you go. You need to have another. And so I think that, as long as we see the juniors, taking the extra time and probably saving negative time, actually the first time they do something, it would take even longer to really delve into the reasoning and everything like that before they get back. That's a good time investment, in our view, but it does materially change what supervision actually means.
Yeah. At a previous firm, actually, I have an anecdote, which one of the associates that I worked with that was sort of my level, she said her greatest learning experience was when she was, brand new NQ, and she was marking up an SPA or something of that nature. And the partner then sat down with her and made her explain every single change she made. And that was hugely beneficial. And I think it's the same concept. I don't think these are new things. I think these are things that supervising lawyers and partners should have been in a lot of cases would have been doing with some of their junior team members. Perhaps, as time gets squeezed, did it a little less. But again, I think it's reminding them actually we do need to teach and we do need our junior members to learn. And if they're not getting it through the old way of experiential learning, we have to find better ways to ask them those questions to make sure they're learning. I think the learning paradigm, in law firms will definitely shift over time as people actually start using Gen AI to perform first drafts of things for work, etc. But by the same token, I think hopefully as, if you're being asked the first time you produce something to actually explain every little change that you made, you're going to learn really quickly.
Yeah. And not suggesting that agents can replace that human aspect to this, but they are I find when most people talk about co-pilots, they're really talking about a kind of a junior to them, helping them to do stuff that they don't want to do anymore. But absolutely another way to conceive of them is as a senior to them who can help to enforce a process around the way that you work and ask penetrating questions that are relevant to the context rather than just a list. That's one of the beauties.
And those agents can create workflows that allow you to capture the thinking as well, which is going to be hugely beneficial. I think one of the best things you could do if you're, prompting with a more chatbot-esque style of tool is to make sure if you're getting an output, like ask them for the AI to explain the output and why it's made those changes. So you're learning just by reading that, and then you can think about that a little bit more intelligently. If it becomes more of an agentic-based tool, you can be capturing some of that information as well, and that creates the ever important audit trail around, one, from a liability perspective, being able to go back into the history of that matter and that particular work stream and saying, this is how the AI was used. This is, the reaction and the reflection on why certain changes were or weren't accepted that the AI may have produced or suggested. Creates a really nice audit trail that we don't know what's going to be needed at some point in the future. But also then I think from a learning perspective, and I'm starting to see new market entrants that are focused on behavioral science and how you apply those principles into the learning experience in this Gen AI world, where you need to capture those things. You need to download out of people's mind the judgment calls they're making as they're reviewing and assessing things that are coming out of certain tools. And then you want people to learn from them. So to be able to capture that through an agentic-based tool will allow a completely different way of learning to help those junior people. You can put them through simulations that have that whole flow of a matter and say, okay, here's the output. Why do you think they made this change? And they could be learning and saying, oh, well, this is actually how people in my firm think about these issues and questions and the types of changes they make. And it becomes a much more powerful learning experience as well.
I suspect what you were going to say before a few minutes ago was AI is an exceptionally good tutor, which actually I 100% agree. So I've got a sister-in-law who's in university, and I'd be thinking I would have loved to have ChatGPT in university to act as my tutor. Like, I wouldn't use it to write essays because what's the point? It's not going to help you in an exam setting. But having it, setting it up as a tutor agent would just be amazing. I mean, you just, and then you look at, primary school kids looking at, different languages for English as a digital language students. I mean, the potential of generative AI for tutoring is just incredible. Yeah.
I agree. And that's why I don't really worry about the juniors, actually, because a junior with an inquiring mind, some curiosity and access to these tools can do what Tara said. It's not just producing a memo and saying, oh, here it's done. Yeah. It's what happens after that. It's the checking and the exploration. And
for the good ones.
And the layers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well.
For the layers of somebody's own understanding of what's going on. And these tools can be really helpful for that. Yeah.
We're definitely seeing that, I think, already in software development. Another area really close to my heart, where I'm hearing from friends who run firms that they're actually just seeing the time to competence shrink for junior developers coming into the area. So there's lots of pitfalls along the way, and so it's not a single smooth path for everyone by any means. But as you say, the good ones are really understanding how they can move forward extremely quickly, develop expertise, within a year, within 6 months, even in some cases in very specific domains, versus a multi-year journey it was previously.
Yeah, it is very exciting. And what are your firms doing about capturing the return on investment? Because the tools aren't cheap, but also they to properly deploy them, you need teams like ours. That's not even taking into account that if you're using APIs like many of us are, the cost of those, the cost of big table exercises where we've got multiple prompts, multiple documents, those costs can rack up quickly on diligence or e-discovery exercises. But I've found it for us, I would say the ROI is more in the usage stats and the fact that people are using it so regularly that clearly it's of great use to them. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I certainly was a huge advocate and really banged to the drum when we were rolling out our tool in Ashurst to make really clear we are not in a position to have direct usage to time value savings, costs, etc. And in fact, all the data we had collected up to that point, which was substantial, I think, in comparison to other tools we have rolled out in the firm, were merely to indicate there is value to be had but we're not going to be able to measure it on day one. And it's very frustrating to be asked multiple times about the ROI on it at day one, when it's like we very clearly have planned to do this over time. So I'd be surprised if any firm out there is currently able to measure anything quantitatively. But I think hopefully what firms are doing, and certainly we had in our year one plan, was over time to start to find out and mine the usage data to understand who is actually attempting to use it for client work. Let's then go look at those matters and see, is there any perceptible impact in terms of time recorded or anything like that? And that just then needs to kind of be expanded over time to hopefully get to a point where you might start to see real impact, but it definitely wasn't going to be in year one. And who knows about year 2 or 3, but I can only imagine, unless there is a very specific type of matter set up where the use of Gen AI was built into the pricing, et cetera, and you could directly correlate work to the use of Gen AI and the time savings and the revenue generated. I genuinely don't see how anyone's putting real figures around this yet. I think it's just far too early.
I agree. It's way, way too early, and it's not... The thinking behind that presupposes that the only reason you're doing this is for efficiency. And there are many, many other benefits, like thinking about doing the work in a completely different way, the quality checking that is possible with these tools, and the capturing of work that was previously uneconomic.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a new way of sort of expanding the kind of work that you're able to address. And these things are really quite hard to quantify across a broad international network with lots and lots of different work types. I think if you were the kind of firm that does one type of work in a like a case management system type workflow, I think it probably would be possible to get some good stats on that.
Yeah.
But we are not one of those kind of firms.
Yeah. No, I don't think any of ours are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and I think one of the linked problems that's kind of implicit in what you say is that the specific way in which it's being used is a movable feast at the moment. You said, can Percy help with this? I think it was your quote, and similar for us. Lithium TW for us, but there is that inquiry going on at the moment, and I think it's far better to let that inquiry run, let the inquisitiveness run before you try and work out how effective the very initial ideas about how to use this have been. We'll see that evolve over the next couple of years. I think some kind of longitudinal assessment, as you know, it will be possible. And for very specific things that we're doing, where we're applying it, not just AI, but actually as part of a larger process project, we are actually, of course, taking some benchmarks, but it's not purely related to AI. It's more related to the entire way that we think about that particular process for that matter.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We actually see for it's like early incomplete evidence, but it does seem that for the heaviest users of the AI, they end up actually charging more time, which I thought was quite interesting, because you would think, well, surely the heaviest users would charge less time, because surely they must be getting loads of time savings from the platform if they keep using it. And when you talk to them, those individuals, they kind of say, yeah, well, it just makes me feel more productive, and so I just do more. But it's all, you have to, when you unpack that, it's like, okay, well, if you've gone down from, if that task was going to take you X time, and then you've minus a percentage because you've done it more quickly using the AI because you use it a lot, so you need to get back to the original and then add more. And when you kind of present that to them, they're like, yeah, well, I'm more in the zone. Maybe there was some stuff that I did there that I wasn't going to charge for because it just was too fiddly, and it was, but actually now this quicker I could charge. I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if it'll be represented in a longer time frame, but it's something that is, if you look at some of the academics stats from Mr. Katz and others and some other studies, aren't that many studies really about Gen AI impact on workplaces that you would say are like remotely similar to ours. But the few that there are say that sometimes you do see that effect.
Yeah. And the thing the industry has been saying about actually all technology has been, if you can automate the admin, the mundane, the lower value, then actually you can spend all your time on the higher value work. So, and I think even a year ago, there was an article based out of the US where there was a firm that unnamed but quoted as saying, what we're seeing is zero impact on the amount of time anyone's charging on a matter, but the allocation of time is shifting to the tough, complex thinking versus the mundane things, which, as you said, either wouldn't get, recorded on the matter at all because the people think they can't do that. So it can actually get captured and recorded and paid for. But it's freeing up people's time to do the complex stuff that allegedly lawyers like to do. So whether or not there's any real time impact, I think, you're right. I think it's yet to be seen. It's just a shift of the work type that's actually being done.
I guess one of the other things that's happening as well is because people are really still in quite an early stage of use, they are experimenting. And so they'll naturally be trying different approaches within their client work, which will add some time. It will hopefully lead to better outcomes. But that may have some kind of, learning glide path associated with it later.
Yeah.
The human factor is really important. And I think as a responsible employer, I think we need to be giving people who work at our organizations the ability to learn about these technologies. And it makes me worry a lot about the organizations that are stepping back from it or waiting to buy the best product.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's because it is, when you look at it, I think pretty much all of us got the technology at the same time, right? It was that, late 22, early 23, where everybody, and even then, like might even say, we didn't really get access until like the ChatGPT API came out in, let's say, Microsoft Azure. I think it was April, May time that year. So that was like really when you could actually do anything. And let's say, for argument's sake, that nobody had really a head start in terms of law firms. You might have, let's say, heard of GPT-2 or 3, but I don't think it would have probably been influencing it. Like I had heard of GPT-3 because we were already looking at some chatbots, like very rigid. You would look them back at them now and think, like, what the hell? What is that? It's useless. But yeah, so it certainly wasn't part of any of our plans. Anyway, and then you almost have this kind of like interesting change piece where everyone starts at the exact same place, exact same time. And then some firms have, run with it, adopted it well, get good usage stats. And then some, for some reason, still don't have anything, or they're, as you say, stepping back and thinking, we're going to wait till this. But, because I think we all would surely think that the state of the AI today, forgetting about, when we get access to like the O1 API or O2 or GPT-5 or whatever, like we don't need to wait for that, because it's good enough today to make a huge impact on like everything, pretty much every single lawyer's workflows. Yeah. I think it's interesting to think about, really, isn't it? So what would you, if you had to kind of rewind back to the first days, your first day in your current role, knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell yourself? What do we think?
That's a hard one, Joe.
I'll go first. I haven't even actually thought about an answer for myself. But I'd probably, to answer that question, I would probably say, like, you'll make it work. Because sometimes if I think back to the first day of my previous role, which would have been 2019 at Denton's, like, what was the state of the legal tech industry back then? It wasn't quite nascent, was it? There were tools available. There were tools, particularly in the AI field. There were obviously some platforms that were there and that were definitely getting traction. But it was kind of difficult to get real traction not just for them, but for any other platforms. I just don't think the industry was properly ready for this efficiency, optimization conversation. But now, and it's not just the generative AI piece. I do feel like there's been some interesting kind of spillover of mind opening of a lot of people, some of the partners you're talking about before never really kind of used any technology. And then they use the generative AI. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I could definitely use that. And actually, talk to me again about legal project management. Yeah, do you know what I mean? And suddenly, people's minds are open to doing things in a better way. So maybe I would say something like, it will happen. You just have to be patient with it.
I think shouting more, or not shouting more, but promoting more
right.
internally about progress and decisions that we were making. Like we made kind of the opposite decision to Tara about sort of deciding not to start with a buy decision, but to start with a build decision. And I think I'm still very happy with that decision, but I think on reflection, I would tell my year ago self to explain that decision better to our internal stakeholders.
Interesting.
So they understand. Mm-hmm.
What do we think? It's a difficult one, this. I think it comes down to the basics, as always. It's very easy to get caught up in a program of work and a program of delivery. It's always about education, about communication, first and foremost. And so, I think I would have spent more time on that before starting. And my background is as a startup founder primarily, and it's that's useful background for this kind of work, but it's also can be the wrong kind of approach to things. Certainly moving a bit more slowly in certain areas can be very beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think we were so successful with that first Gen AI project because we had that transparency and engagement and thought firm-wide. We thought about the impact on everyone across the firm and how we could make sure we were engaging with each person in the right way, and in some cases engaging differently with different cohorts of people. And I think if you go back to other types of technology or other types of tech-enabled projects, I probably would say to my old self, think bigger, think bolder, and engage more of the teams up front and early on, because I think in particular the big success was not just the firm-wide engagement, but also those really critical functions around the firm that were essential. I think that concept of, we'll have a small innovation team and we'll really drive and everyone will just be so excited by our enthusiasm, we'll osmose to everyone else. Whereas I think knowing that we had those key supporters and collaborators who were considered core to what we were trying to do, sitting in knowledge, sitting in learning and development, sitting in finance, sitting in IT, etc., really shifted our ability to move more quickly at a time and in a space where everyone wanted to actually probably move a lot more slowly than we were pushing them to move. But in our view, we said we have to capitalize. We actually have to move faster than in fact, we moved faster than we had ever done in any technology-led implementation. And we did that to great success compared to other technology implementations because we involved all of those people. I probably would have over the years pushed to grow those teams and the people in those teams that would be able to support that type of work more in the past rather than just shoulder that all on our team, because I think potentially in the past we could have been more successful in pushing out even just some of the machine learning AI tools that we had and grow their usage, because I think we just maybe thought a little too small and safe sometimes where we could have been a little bit bolder.
Yeah. And it does encourage you to go bolder, doesn't it, generative AI? It's just kind of, you think that applications are endless and you kind of, it gets you out there more, doesn't it? So,
I think one of the things as well for me is that, it does. And I think it's quite important for the firm to understand what generative AI is. Because, it started out as one thing and now it's becoming lots of other things. So, we've talked a little bit about agents. But there are other things like the switch from training time to inference time, and the incorporation of system 2 thinking, which is an absolute game changer, I found, from the point of view of lawyers in understanding how these things work and how they think they can apply them to their work. Because, it was very often in early conversations there was the fairly reasonable objection that these models hadn't been trained on enough legal data, enough actual proper legal data. I think that's becoming less of an issue with the introduction of inference compute and chain of thought reasoning and all of these things. So it's very necessary that lawyers understand that change. So this is very, it's not a single thing, Gen AI. It's a whole series of different things. And I think agentic thinking and reasoning, as applied specifically to legal practice rather than the it can book your holiday kind of version of agentic AI, is really important to give people a deep immersion in.
We've not really touched on, have we, like the merits of, let's say, fine-tuning a model? Because it's not really been done yet on legal data. Not really. Partly because, from a regulatory perspective, we can't really do that, particularly on client data, which is where all the good stuff would be.
I think Harvey did some fine-tuning.
That was just on case data, wasn't it? Primarily, I think it was pretty okay. But then at least with that, it's I don't think we'd be any better than RAG ultimately. Let's say like a Westlaw AI or Lexis Plus AI. I think, but like would there be a merit in, let's say, putting in 1,000 settlement agreements or SPAs or whatever, and actually fine-tuning the base foundational model? Would that actually perform any better? And I don't know, because as you say, there are other things you can do now with the way that O1 works with chain of thought, with pipelines, with RAG. Like, does the AI need more legal knowledge and data to actually perform what we need it to do? So I don't know at this point.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do we? This is all a big experiment. I'm not sure, on the fine-tuning piece, that's where I would start in terms of assigning our scarce resources.
Yeah, right, because it's like it's a hypothetical, but as of today, we can say that it might be better. But I'm kind of happy with the way the state of the technology is today, that we can achieve a lot of what we want to do. We don't even need to wait for any new models. We're as good as it is today. I am looking forward to getting O1 and deploying it with the API and seeing our lawyers use that. And, because it does seem that the quality will be better. But ultimately, with enough good prompting and enough process behind the scenes, you can get a lot out of it, So
I think there will be, or there will be new approaches to tuning, basically. And I was just watching something earlier today from the OpenAI day 2 of their 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah.
And they were introducing the concept of reinforcement, fine-tuning. So, and using examples of a dozen or a few dozen examples being enough to perform that. And I, it's super new and I haven't tried.
Yeah.
But what they showed me is that there is a performance increase. And so we will do some experiments, and we will get onto the trial, and we will.
I could definitely get behind that. I mean, but let's say it is a dozen. How many did it used to take for reinforcement learning? We're talking thousands of examples. The shift is quite astonishing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So I think, in the the world of 12 months ago, it would have been infeasible for any of our organizations to consider fine-tuning for ourselves. It's just we just wouldn't have the skills. Even if we had the money, I don't think we could access the people with the skill to do that. But I think as we get new technologies that make it easier for us to make minor adaptations, I think it's we will end up doing some customization.
Yeah.
But whether that customization stays with the model or, how that, we need to look into all this.
Yeah, someone needs to solve for the sort of client data and confidentiality issue that every firm will have. But that may be around the corner, who knows? And so far as I'm aware, I think OpenAI and Anthropic have both indicated intentions to target legal specifically. So I'm keen to see what they're planning to do from that perspective.
Well, I was looking at the second day of Christmas as well earlier, and and I think they were specifically looking for people from law, weren't they?
Yes, they've asked for our data sets as well.
Oh, have they? Interesting. Yes.
They would love anyone for the legal industry to please share their data sets with OpenAI.
Yeah, you could tick no to that though, and I tick no. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, guys, look, thank you so much for coming on. It's really been a pleasure, and yeah, really looking forward to continuing the conversation. Great to chat.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks very much.